Should South Africa continue to regulate genome-edited plants as GMOs? Food security is not only restricted to South Africa but is a global issue and urgent priority. If not maintained, it may lead to major health impacts and economic consequences. Over the years, more biotechnological ways have been developed to combat food insecurity. Genetically modified organisms, GMOs, are one such way. Genome editing is a newer, more precise method and is ultimately an example of GMOs from a scientific perspective. The article published by The Conversation makes an argument that amending GMO Act 15 of 1997 to exclude genome-edited organisms is the next positive step for South Africa, but this is highly questionable. Treating genome-edited crops differently from GMOs is like allowing untested drugs on the market just because they were made with newer, better technology. Therefore, South Africa should continue to regulate genome-edited plants as GMOs. Biotechnology and food science play significant roles in genome editing, safety and quality of consumable products, and can greatly profit from these.
Is a credible and reliable source based on multiple criterions. This article is a current article based on an ongoing issue that is still being debated. Published in 2022, it is still within the 5-year benchmark, this increasing its likelihood of being relevant. The article evaluates and clearly states that points with reasoning and appropriate evaluation, thus placing it at a scientific level. The article was published by the highly esteemed Dave Berger, Professor in Molecular Plant Pathology, James R. Lloyd, Associate Professor, and Priyan Pillai, Senior Researcher, therefore increasing the authority as the authors are associated with this topic in their fields of study. Although the information in the article has not been peer-reviewed, it was published by a reputable source and is verifiable, as the author's biography and institutional organization are provided. The aim of the article is to push for a more science-based and risk-proportionate regulation, which attempts to encourage apparent innovation while maintaining safety. An argument is posed to the reader claiming that South Africa is using outdated laws and the legislation they are using is from a 25-year-old legislation, also is not conforming to what the world is doing. Lloyd, Berger, and Pillai, 2022. The authors have suggested that South Africa should change its regulatory and conform to the way in which half of the world is regulating their GM plants. They have stated how this change for South Africa could improve the country and have suggested that the change reduces the risk and justifies a less stringent regulatory, but genome editing has undiscovered potential and is highly questionable. A second argument has been made to the reader stating that if South Africa were to change their regulatory framework, it will help them resolve their issues of food insecurity and agricultural challenges. The authors have claimed that treating genome-edited plants differently from GMO will place South Africa as a competitor in agricultural growth, and there is higher potential of economic growth and nourishment.
Genome editing has undiscovered potential and has its own hazards that can be harmful or breach the safety precautionary framework. As we all know, in the hands of humans, things tend to go astray. Thus, the biggest fear identified by Lee Kolai from Yale Insights with gene editing is gene drive. Lee Kolai continued to explain that the change induced in genetic drive could potentially lead to antibiotic resistance or other mutations that could go out into the population and would be very difficult to control. Basically, creating incurable diseases or other potential mutations that we wouldn't really have control over. We are not just editing genes here. We are editing the future, and once released, some changes can never be undone. Strict regulations of the laws of genome-edited organisms ensure that risk is assessed before release and the safety of the consumer is retained while also keeping them informed about their foods, which speaks to transparency. Secondly, consumer preference plays a big role in gene editing, and thus, making the mistake of not labeling gene-edited products clearly may lead to rejection and mistrust. The ignorance of this issue may cause great concern among consumers, farming communities, and activists, as elaborated in an article written by Grain in July 2022. For instance, if South Africa were to send oranges to Japan that has strict food rules and wants to know exactly how their food is made, and these oranges were changed genetically through genetic editing to last longer, but the boxes don't say so. When they find out that these oranges were edited but not labeled, they get upset and send them back. As a result, they may not want to buy any more fruit from South Africa again, even the ones that are not edited, because they do not feel they can trust South Africa. Consumers also have a loss of trust in South African products, thus stirring up debates as to whether South African products can be trusted or not. The change of the act would cause great suspicion between importing and exported countries in South Africa, resulting in a decline in the economy of South Africa, amplifying poverty and unemployment in the country. The big question here is whether South Africa should loosen the regulation of GM products Loosening regulations in the name of innovation might seem progressive, but risks taking 2 steps back in public trust and safety. South Africa should regulate genome-edited plants as GMOs to avoid unnecessary mistrust between exporting and importing countries. This will avert economic damage and the risks to public health and trust.